All my life, I wanted to go to the Busco Town Hall, and I finally made it. Mike Fillion, how are you?
Very good.
Talked to him on the phone the other day. Now, we're a little bit after the fact here. What is this? The 9th of April 2008. We've done this show in segments. It started last October when one of those giant transformers on an articulated truck came off Route 122 onto Route 11 in a pouring rainstorm, and Calvin and I were there, the stalwarts, rain coming in our noses, and we watched that thing come around the corner, and it was a spectacle and a half, like the old-fashioned hook and ladder fire trucks. So that's where this segment started. And then we watched the blades turn, which what everybody was dreaming about, watching some of the blades turn. And then I think 9 more were set to go online that night. So I don't know how many are turning up there now. Have you ridden by?
The last I heard was about 20 some odd.
That's what Jane said?
Yeah.
Well, Mike Fillion, we're glad to have you here as town supervisor. You've been involved in many things. I didn't get a free cup of coffee at your restaurant, so nobody can say I'm favoring you on purpose. But we're delighted to be up here tonight to talk about a lot of progress with the wind farms. And we have some guests. Why don't you introduce them?
This is Daniel Spitzer. He's our town attorney for the projects. And this is Charlie Terinsky. He's also for Marble River project.
Well, we're going to have, with any luck at all, we're going to have these wind turbines all over the place here in the North Country, because they've always accused me of being windy. Now we know this area can live up to its name. Mm-hmm. That's why they're here. Let's go back to the beginning, Michael. When did you first start hearing about wind farms?
Actually, a small company came to us probably about 8 years ago. And
was it that long ago?
It's got to be 6 to 8 years ago now.
That's before I heard about it.
And it was kind of I think it was New York Wind Power, and they actually looked like a bunch of college kids, and they kind of had a dream, and and
nothing wrong with college kids and dreams,
And it was a nice idea back then, and I think they came out with maybe a proposal of maybe 10 to 20 turbines. And then it kind of, I think a couple leases went in the area, and then we didn't hear anything for quite a while. And then that's when all heck broke loose, and then we started getting, I think about 5-6 years later, then all of a sudden everybody was here. There's probably 11 different companies trying to come in. And New York Wind Power, and I think Horizon, Horizon slash before, New York Wind Power, and Noble and so forth. They kind of put their foot in the door, and they got in, one of the first ones, and now we have projects.
Boy, do we have projects.
We have windmills.
We have projects.
We have the wind to give them.
Isn't it wonderful, though? In this age, people are all talking green. I just bought my wife one of those new hybrid cars for her birthday last week, and even though I broke the speed limit just a little bit coming the wrong way up here tonight, I still got 45 miles a gallon. Oh. Did you notice gas prices today?
Oh, it's crazy.
They're a tad high.
Especially around here.
We got to be the highest in the country here.
We are,
255 and up. My favorite station was.
355.
I meant 355
I
and
broke
up.
$70 on my tank the other day. That's the first time I've ever broke 70. It used to be $20.
Yeah, it cost
I
me
got one of those.
long ago.
I got one of those big trucks in my garage, and it's going to stay there for a while till the trailer needs towing. Because the last time I filled it up about 3 weeks ago was $73.41. Mm-hmm. And with this little hybrid, with a little 11-gallon tank.
They're fantastic.
Way, way, way better. So anyway, everybody in this table thinks wind power is a wonderful idea.
Well, I think it's the greatest thing. I think the town's really benefiting out of it. Over the last few years, we're just trying to wonder where our revenue was going to come from, and this is kind of a blessing in disguise. There's
not even in very good disguise.
No, not in disguise.
That's a real blessing.
It is a blessing, yeah. And it has its downfalls, but by far it's been really good for the town so far. We're really pleased with it.
We've talked to farmers. We've talked to off camera. We've talked to business people. And everybody says we didn't always agree on every single step, but we got the contracts we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
We're happy with the way it looks now. The companies seem to be upholding their end of the bargain. And isn't it nice to see those big blades
You betcha.
go?
Yeah, it's nice. I'd be glad when they're all running.
What surprises did you see along the way from when you first started to learn about wind power?
Well, for the economic benefit around here, I mean, it's just been outstanding. There's so much more business around the area. And we were always, being a small town, we were so worried about the congestion. And it really hasn't been that bad. You know, it's not near as bad as what we thought. You know, I mean, you during your work days, if you're going down a back road, you were going to see a lot of dump trucks and stuff. But on the main road, it's pretty near the same. It's not a heck of a lot difference, and so the benefits have just been so much better. And it's been good jobs all the way around. I think when we had a problem with something, it was always solved quick, and we've been pleased as a town board. We've had our little differences, but I think overall everything's been handled really professional, and it's been doing good. And I think we're going to have a really good project here coming too next year.
You know, I can foresee these wind farms, at least these first wind farms in northern New York, becoming a tourist destination.
It has happened in some parts of the state already.
You see 10, 15 cars by the side of the
You
road.
see them taking pictures all the time on the side of the road.
My wife and a bunch of her friends went to a baby shower, my granddaughter's baby shower in Malone the other day, and guess what they talked about when they got home?
Exactly.
They're turning. We stopped the car, snapping pictures. Look at, you know. So you obviously you're pretty happy with the way this is all working
very,
out
very
so
much
far.
so. Now with them running, now people can see that they're not noisy. I mean, there's people they got to turn their car off. They got to roll down the window. They got to listen just to hear anything, and they're very quiet. You know. People
Well,
just
Calvin and
out.
I, not that we're doubting Thomas's, but we parked the car within 600, 700, 800 feet maybe of several of those turning turbines the other day, and we had to strain our ears and stop talking to hear anything besides the wind blowing through them, like the wind.
Yeah.
Listen, I live on the Saranac River in Morrisonville, and the wind blowing through the trees is way louder than those turbines were.
Yeah, very much so.
So there's been a lot of misinformation, and I hope that our series of programs, talking with a lot of people involved from the beginning to the end, will help to allay some of the misinformation that was. And you know what? There's going to be doubting Thomases. There's going to be people who disagree. But overall, what do you think, Dan?
Well, my main goal when I represent a community is that whatever happens is what the community wants. So if it's a community like Malone and Brandon, which didn't want windmills, that they passed laws so that there were no windmills there, and the companies respected that. Other communities like those in Clinton County have taken a serious look at the impacts, done what they could to minimize the impacts, and made the decision that this was right for them and their community. And obviously, $100 million projects don't come along too often, but this is a $100 million project that's plus that has actually benefited the communities in terms of significant increases to the local town tax base. Certainly has helped the county out as well in terms of through pilot revenues, and in terms of the business, I suspect there's been quite a bit of sales tax spike in this part of the county as a result.
Good point.
And to me, it's the culmination of a long decision process where the community made the decision. And one of the things that's currently being dealt with at the state level now is an effort to preempt local control over wind power through what's called Article 10.
Okay.
And
I did not know that.
And it's very important that people speak out, in my opinion, about that, because no matter how you feel about the process, I think most people will feel that the decision should be made locally, not in Albany. And so this area right here is a perfect example of why Albany doesn't need to take any action, because communities are looking at the benefits and the negatives and making their own decisions. And the fact is, these facilities are getting built, and greenhouse gas-free energy is a reality in northern New York. There's at the end of these projects, all the ones that are planned and the communities have said they're willing to consider, there's quite a significant amount of energy that will be produced by the state without having to import fuel, which is to a lot of people a real important homeland security aspect of these projects. significant economic impact. Yes, they are big, and yes, they are visual, and a lot of people do not like the view shed. There's no question, as I always say to every community.
I think they're the
They,
most beautiful thing in the world.
You know, they certainly do change the view shed. There's no
Yeah.
question about it. But the most important thing to me was how these three communities dealt with the process and came to their own decision making about what they wanted. They weren't bullied by people. They weren't put off by lawsuits from a minority of the people who wanted to impose their will on the community. They took the high road and made a decision that seems to be benefiting the community. And as you say, not everybody will agree. Not everybody will think that these are worth the impacts. Not everybody will think it'll be worth the traffic, and some people will still complain about the noise. It's a personal decision, but I'm very proud to have been associated with the way these three communities conducted themselves.
It's great because, sometimes we're nice and peaceful and quiet in Busco and in these other towns like Ellenburg and Altona and around. But every now and again, it's important to say, hey, we're here. We can decide what's good for our area, and we can make an impact for ourselves and maybe even set the scene and help other communities make decisions. When did you start learning about wind power?
My company, I work for, Hodson Russ, has been involved in electric power since long before I joined the firm. We have electric utility clients, electric consumer clients, and I've been involved with renewable energy for a fairly long part of my career in terms of dealing with companies and dealing with zoning issues. I work on a lot of wind projects around the state. I also work on biomass projects. I work on cogeneration facilities for natural gas. I work on other energy projects. And this really took off, though, after New York State adopted the renewable energy portfolio, requiring an increase in energy production coupled with the federal tax credits. Really, the industry took off at that point. And it's an example of where a government can subsidize things in an area that will produce change for the better. Notwithstanding the opinions of those who are opposed to the project, I think most people agree that rather than subsidizing big oil for a change, subsidizing renewable energy costs does have a lot of benefits in terms of, in this case, homeland security as well as clean gas. Not all renewable energy is clean energy, but it also has benefits in other ways. Wind power was, now that these facilities will be built, and Charlie's project, when it gets built, that fuel is always going to be free. You're never going to have to pay for that fuel. So you talked earlier about the gas prices going up. The more those gas prices go up, the more of a bargain these wind towers are going to be, because the fuel cost is always going to be free. And so it's been very interesting to see this. There's now literally dozens of these projects. Charlie and I are also working on a project literally on the opposite end of the state by Chautauqua Lake.
Sure.
And they're all across the state as well as across the country. Other areas of the country are really also going into a lot of wind. Texas, I think, now has over 5,000 megawatts of installed wind capacity. Charlie's company is active there.
We saw the big farms in California, Palm Springs.
Right, and actually those farms are actually quite outdated.
Yeah.
Those are much smaller turbines, much noisier turbines, and the modern turbines have much less impact, both in terms of space consumed and cost to the environment, while producing much greater amounts of energy from a smaller footprint environmentally. So that's like looking at the Neanderthal wind parks. When you look at those ones, I know the ones you're talking about off of Palm Springs, and just before you come to the place with all the dinosaurs in an I-10. I know that route. I used to live in Tucson, and I know that route very well.
Oh,
okay, but those are really the ancestors of these are the cutting edge. What's being produced here and these communities are receiving benefits that even a couple of years after signing the deals are as good as any community in the state is getting. So they're at the North Country has really, I think, shown the way for the rest of the state with this project.
This isn't only a pitch with you. You believe this stuff.
I believe in communities having the right to make their own decisions. And so I believe just as much in Clinton's right to host a project as I do in Malone's right to say no to a project. I believe that communities should decide their own destiny, not Albany, not Washington. There are some projects that are, notwithstanding their importance to the whole community, too much of an impact on a dispersed scale like wind, to be able to have a decision taken out of our hands. For example, a hazardous waste facility. You have no say in the state if you're a local government how hazardous waste facility. It's all
Absolutely.
decided by the state. Some plants are of such regional importance, like nuclear plants, that yes, the state should have the lead role, the federal government, obviously, from a safety perspective. But when you're talking about wind, which is a fairly dispersed, localized impact, that, what I believe is that home rule is the most important function, and that each community should make their own decision. And so that it's just as important that Clinton, Ellenberg, and Altona had the right to say yes, as that Malone and Brandon had the right to say no.
Yeah. And I bet you when you ran for office, you didn't know what you were getting into, did you, Mike?
No,
Huh?
not at all, not at all.
But you know what? You've shown that you can handle it. Do you think you've answered most of the questions?
I think I've answered most of the questions probably 50 to 100 times.
Yeah, you almost learn a pat answer,
Oh,
don't you?
yeah, because like we were saying, when we first started, the wind power up here, you couldn't get information on it. It was hard to get anybody. I was actually recommended to Dan through the Malone supervisor, and he saved us. You know, he's the one that came in, and was the knowledge of everything, and he helped us a lot to go through this. And I think he's kind of set a standard for all the other towns to follow around here. I mean, we get phone calls from other places, actually other states, talking about our wind laws on it and stuff. And we recommended them to Dan, and he did an excellent job.
How
on
do
ours.
you think, how will your tax rate be affected by this?
Our tax rate is going to be great. Most of the other towns are pretty jealous of us because we've actually cut our taxes over half last year, and this year we have the money to cut our taxes, our land taxes totally. And we're working on the county taxes too.
That's a pretty good testimony, isn't it?
It's nice to have an actual impact on people's pocketbooks.
Yeah, because the town of Altona, Larry said 50%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
And we have at least double the windmills, more than that, more
Yeah.
than double the windmills. So we are impacted a great deal compared to what some of the other towns are, but we're really benefiting out of it.
now, are you
People
involved
really-
in a 15-year contract with this?
It's 20, it's
The pilot agreement through the IDA is 15 years.
15.
The host agreement through the towns is life of the projects.
like,
So what
But when the pilot is off, the facilities go on the tax rolls. So in terms of a revenue stream, it's life of the project for both ways.
well, we were talking about, this is cutting edge
Mhm.
technology right now. In 15 years, there might be another dimension. But who knows?
That's right, and one of the things that all the towns have done to protect themselves is they have decommissioning bonds.
Yeah, right.
And requirements in place. It's interesting, you talk about there could be another technology, yet the reality is that most of the coal plants are 70 and 80 years old, and they're still cranking along. The nuclear plants now in New York are 30 years old, and they're our cheapest sources of energy in the state.
Yeah.
So age is not necessarily a deterrent to good energy production if they're properly maintained.
Yeah, and people can't judge many years ago, in the 70s, we had that Mother Earth idea that we wanted to have maybe a little windmill in our backyard, maybe a couple of solar panels back here, and those of us who live near rivers had thoughts. But the individual windmills or turbines back in those days didn't stand up
no.
to the strain. The technology involved in these turbines is incredible.
Yeah, I think Charlie could speak to the technology a lot better
Well,
than I could.
Charlie, we didn't mean to.
That's okay. I love listening to this.
we-
This is testimony, and this
we
is
could
fantastic.
see
This is what
you-
I live for.
We could see you tuning up over there, just getting ready for the next chapter.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your involvement now.
Well, my job as a developer for Horizon Wind Energy is to kind of set the stage for these projects to happen. And really what I think largely entails, you hit it on a little bit, was how do you come into a town and start talking to landowners and town boards, and they have questions, and they have reasonable questions. And it's really an educational process, and it takes years. So our job is just really, you can break it down to as simple as driving folks down when they have the time, busing them down to Maple Ridge. The best way to answer any question about a windmill is stand underneath one. It's real hard to have any disinformation or make anything up when you're
Did
standing
you do that,
underneath
Mike?
one.
Did you take a ride?
Yes, we did. We
Did
all
you?
did. Yeah.
So-
both
Yeah.
all of them around here.
Yeah.
We went to.
Yeah, it's just a slow process, an educational process, answering people's questions, and our job is to permit the project, work through with the towns. We're a guest in the town, bottom line, and as a guest in the town, we got to understand what the laws are, understand what the needs of all the landowners. In this particular project, it's a 220 megawatt project, which would be, I guess, the second largest in New York. And there's 87 landowners in this project. 87 landowners in a small town, 136 parcels. That's over 20,000 acres. That's 87 landowners in town that are going to, that will benefit from this directly. It's like 87 jobs practically, locally.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, there is an income coming from that, from using their particular pieces of land, and it takes a long time working with each of those landowners, because a farmer might say, well, I don't want you touching this field. Or a hunter might say, I don't want you touching this area that I hunt in. There's wetlands, that I think is kind of the 800-pound gorilla up here that we're constantly permitting through. There's a lot of beavers that live up here. So it's a slow process, but it's not as slow as it used to be. In a project that we built in Maple Ridge, that was a 7-year development term.
It was 7 years.
We've been metering the wind up here for 5 years, since 2002. Those things all start to dovetail and come together as you start to go to construction, which is obviously our intent this summer.
How does this particular area that we're sitting in and the surrounding area involving the other towns, how do we stand up to other areas in New York State in terms of the wind we produce?
From a wind perspective?
Yeah.
That's a good question, because that's all we look at. A wind map in New York.
We don't want to ask you hard questions.
A wind map in New York is, it's actually easy to get to, and I can give you the websites. There's public websites to see this stuff. And basically what we always say is we look for three things. We look for the wind, which is in pink on a wind map. It's over 7 meters per second. The reason we use meters per second, I think it's sort of a European denominated metric. We look for wind, which this place has. If you look on a wind map, this area and Tug Hill in Lewis County are the two areas that are just obviously plateaus of a very solid wind resource, better than anywhere else in New York. Wind transmission. You can't just do it with wind. You need transmission. There happens to be a 230 kilovolt transmission NIPA line just to the south. That's necessary because transmission's expensive and hard to find. And finally, you need a town that is willing to work with you. In this case, this is a town that has worked with Dan and has been willing to work with us, and the landowners have been as well, and it's been a pleasure. That's what we look for. So, on a map, this area stacks up well. There's other sites, but they're usually not as large. To give you an example, in terms of the size, when you take all the projects, when you include Altona, these towns of Clinton and Ellenburg, and maybe down the pike a little bit, Chateauguay and Belmont, that's going to be the total power that they're going to generate is going to be well over 2% of the total power in New York. That's incredible.
Now that's a figure I hadn't heard before, but I'm delighted to have you say that at this point in the program. 2% of all the power in New York.
Yeah, nameplate capacity. That's something.
That blows me away.
Yeah, I hope I'm right.
If you're not, our phones will ring and you don't have to worry about it. But we'll find you.
Yeah, you know right.
How did you get involved with it in the first place? What an exciting field to get into at this point.
It's something I wanted to be always involved in renewable energy, and had gone back to school to think about how to get involved and what to get involved in, startups, what kind of technology. It was what I was trying to figure out. What technology amongst renewable energy technologies is most viable? And in doing my little bit of research, like we all do, talking to people, dropping by companies and that sort of thing, this is back a number of years ago, the one renewable energy technology that is economically viable. I'm not an engineer, unfortunately. I wish I was. So I don't add any value in creating technology, but developing it maybe, and setting the stage for it, maybe I can. And wind was the one thing that's economically viable. And another statistic for you: NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, they did a study, and they're the ones that do the renewable energy credits. Forgetting the name right now, but that's really what started this out in 2004. NYSERDA did a study with GE, and the study showed that the implementation of, I think it was approximately 7% of wind energy in the state's grid over the course of the next 5 years. Would save the ratepayer over $300 million a year. So that's, I mean, that's not nothing. Yeah, this is clean. It's clean energy, and that's our first focus. Because there's a number of issues around that, but the fact that you can save money while also creating clean energy, and on top of that, you can create local dollars. That's fantastic. I mean, it is exciting to be part of.
Sounds like a lot of win-win, win-win-win, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Really.
exactly.
It is indeed.
So the point I want to make is this is kind of an exciting thing for a young guy like yourself to get into at this stage.
It is indeed.
Did you get a college degree here in New York?
I have a college degree from New York, and
Where?
Skidmore College, actually.
Oh, Skidmore.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and then that's.
But you didn't dream of getting in this field when you got out of school, did you?
No. Actually, I actually lived in Asia after I went.
Oh, God, here we're-
And I won't
There's
take
a
you. I
whole
won't take you
other
through the whole story.
No
but I
kidding.
went in getting back into. I was actually in software. And I lived out in Asia for a number of years, and decided that I'll give you the short version. It's a little known fact that when you live in Asia for about 5 years, you become a lifer, and I was hitting the 5-year mark.
Uh-oh.
It was time to cut my ties, and I went back to school. I went back to school out of state, and worked tried to figure out how to get into renewable energy technology. Ran into a couple of guys who you've met them, Michael Skelly and Patrick Doyle, who are my boss, and it was a little smaller then, but it was still it was hot to trot in 2004, and just getting going. And I'll tell you, the last 3 years have been a roller coaster.
Well,
All of a sudden, you can't buy a magazine without it saying
no.
something about green energy
Oh, no.
technology. It's
And
all
these
over
things
the
are
news.
exploding. We've seen them explode over the last few years just since we've been thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, it's a rural community in northern New York that, as I said a few minutes ago, is now ready to splash into the rest of the world and say we're somebody.
Exactly.
And I'm sure it hasn't been all smooth sailing for you from the very beginning, but you've withstood the barbs and the arrows, if you
Exactly.
will. And are you pretty happy where you are?
Oh
at
yeah,
this point?
very happy, you guys. We wanted to stick with it, and we talked about getting out, and like a board member, it's kind of, I've been 17 years now, so I kind of wanted to get out, but this has been such a good thing for the town that we stuck with it right from the beginning, and we wanted to see it through. And I think the other board members all feel pretty much the same way. They've been here almost as long as I have, some of them, and we wanted to stick it through. We've been through a lot, and I think it's good for the town, and by far a majority of the people want it, and we want to do the best for them.
I think, and if history proves you right,
hope so.
that'll be a good feeling too. It must be interesting for you. Mike's got a little restaurant there along Route 11. We stopped in there the other day, and they were hanging from the rafters. That's pretty good. But
It's a challenge.
the interesting thing is, we hear little clusters of people. Guess what they're talking about? Wind power.
Exactly. We have discussions all the time, and everybody's an expert, and
Oh yeah, everybody's got to be an expert.
so we just kind of sit and listen to it all, and it's really a good way for me to learn what's going on in the area, because not everybody tells us everything. So we listen in on the discussions, and we find out what people's concerns are, and we've adapted it, and I think we've solved a lot
Sometimes
of
the
problems.
comments are a little painful.
I was going to
but-
say,
Oh, yeah.
I would add to that. We know where to go. And we need to figure out what's going on
Yeah.
in the town. We go sit at the diner and we
Well,
listen.
that's what you do.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the local fire station.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
Good and bad.
Yeah,
you know,
you hear the good and the bad.
whatever Legion Hall there is, and
Mm-hmm.
but you have to. I mean, he represents this town as a supervisor, and you got to know what the people are thinking.
Exactly,
Because
exactly.
that's why they voted for you.
Exactly.
Why anybody would want to run for that?
I would. I asked myself
Way
many times.
beyond me. But obviously, you're doing a good job at it.
Thanks.
What's the timetable with your project?
The project is we are closing up permitting now, and the permitting process has been about a 3-year process, and we are intending to move into construction, which is sort of a handoff process, fairly intensive process. We're intending to start construction in May, and that will be a staged process, and it'll take about a full year to do. So if it starts in May, let's say May 15th of 08, hopefully we'll be able to have that kind of final commissioning party in May 15th, 09.
You know what we've learned and watching this?
Mike's smiling.
we watched
He's like,
all
we'll
of-
see.
We've watched all of this from the periphery and sometimes pretty up close and personal. And what we found is that projected dates are not always chiseled out of the.
That's absolutely true, and I'm sure that's what Mike
Because
was
you know
saying.
what they say about
Yeah.
Murphy's Law,
Yeah,
don't you?
exactly.
And when you already mentioned that magical word wetlands,
Yeah.
and a
And we
lot of
have
other regulations, and a lot of other things like the worst winter we've had in how many years?
That was our biggest thing with our last project, is just the winters. And
Just
you never know what it's going to be like.
you never know.
You know, it's tough.
So you do your best and you get going, and
Yep.
and your constituency, I'm sure the people I talk to, when are those things ever going to start turning? You know, they told me November.
Yeah.
Well, they're turning,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're generating electricity, and that electricity is going onto the grid right now, as far as I know.
And I'll tell you, every kilowatt that goes on, it's displacing some sort of kilowatt that was created by coal or natural gas. That's saving money.
That's
kinda neat.
absolutely right.
Yep.
Kinda
You
neat.
guys are very, very good. You should get an extra raise for this good pitch tonight. I appreciate you coming here. In case you didn't hear him, he had to beat a hasty exit. Dan took off because he had another meeting to be at.
Yeah.
Right about
we
now.
Actually,
His
apparently I
tires
have to be at that meeting
his
as well.
tires are squealing right now as he's heading over to the other meeting.
Yeah.
But I thank you both for
Well,
your
thank you.
comments. Michael, I thank you for your support for these projects. Not for you personally, but for the people involved. As Dan said, it's what the town wants, and it's what the town is going to get.
Exactly.
And it'll pay off, I think, in a
It
big
has,
way.
it has now.
That's
You
my
know, it's starting to do it now.
already.
You got it.
Right. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you
Have a
very
great
much.
evening.
Yeah, thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Well, you can't say that now.
Jim McNeil, how are you?
I'm good.
I
I'm
love these old buildings because I walked in, saw the floor, and I said, this had to be a basketball courts in the olden days.
That it was. Before they put the floor in, they played basketball downstairs, and upstairs they showed movies and stage. And after they put the floor in here, they used to run the square dance with a band over on the stage area
Little
down
tiny
here.
stage behind Calvin. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Like so many of these wonderful old buildings, this dates back, what, 90 years?
Roughly 90 years. It was in the early 20s. It was built, and then it perished in a fire, and it was rebuilt to what you see today.
Isn't it great? Have you always been in this town?
Not really. I'm from the town of Altona, actually,
Are you?
but just on the lines. I married. My wife came from this village, and we've been here all of our adult life. You know, it's home.
You know, when I said it, I'll say it right on camera, I love these North Country towns, these rural towns. Calvin and I stood outside waiting for you to finish with your meetings and listening to the water flow through and hear the birds and look around, people all waving at each other.
There's always something to do up here. You can walk around, and when you walk, you know your neighbors.
Isn't it great?
You'll stop and visit. It might take you 2 hours to walk around the block, which is only a half mile,
Yeah,
but it's relieving.
it's the best.
It
It's
is.
the
It is.
best. So how long have you been supervisor?
I'm on my second term. I've got 3 years in and one more to go on this
I was
term.
remembering that last election, there weren't too many votes. How many did it end up being when it was all
It,
counted?
it ended up 2 on the last one,
Can you?
but that's double of what it was on my first election.
Was it only one?
It was down to 1 vote on the first election. And we had to go to court
Only in
to
Ellenburg.
get that one opened.
Only
was-
in Ellenburg.
Yes.
Isn't that a riot?
And for two elections in a row, it's very odd
Yeah.
from what I've heard, you know.
Only
It's-
only in the North Country. Only in the North Country.
I wouldn't want to do it again.
Oh, golly. So let's talk about wind power. This is starting to be quite a project for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I didn't come in right at ground level, but I took in on the negotiating part and with Noble, and on most of the erection and this and that, and it's been very, very interesting. At first, we had some people that were against them. They're either noise or flickering, sickness, whatever. Since we've built them and the job has progressed, that has dwindled to almost zero at this time. When you learn the true facts of them, and they're not noisy, and they're good for the town, we've showed the people that we're taking the money from these, and everybody in town will benefit from it. Not just the landowners or the farmers, it'll be every taxpayer in Ellenburg.
How does it affect your tax rate so far?
Right now, we've received a host community agreement of $243,000, and we applied every penny of it to the general and highway budget, which
Oh,
is
you did? Oh,
it reduced them both a little over $2 per thousand. When this is all said and done in Marble River, we should be able to get better. It'll be better than half of our town budget, the whole budget.
pretty good shot.
So it's the people will see this, and we're helping them. We told them that we would help them, and that's what we're doing. We're helping them.
How many turbines now for each project?
We have 54 from Noble, which are up and turning now, not all of them, but they're being commissioned, and 21 more coming from Marble River in the year 2009. So, I don't know. I think they're majestic myself. That's the way I describe
You know
them.
how we feel about it. We've
You know?
watched it right from the very beginning, and we'll be watching the Marble River project as it begins, and hopefully we'll be able to chronicle that on hometown cable right straight through. It's amazing to us. What did you have that little rush when you saw the first one generating power?
Yes, I did, because as the job progressed, construction crews came in and, of course, dug up the ground, put the bases in. You've seen parts of the windmills going by on tractor trailers and trucks. The next question was, when are they going up? When are they going up? So it progressed a little farther. They started putting them up. Well, when are they going to turn?
Oh gosh, that's
You
the
know,
question we heard
so-
for months. And,
and-
yeah, when's
and-
it gonna go?
I mean, toward the end, I just say tomorrow. You know, but the people are really into it right now, and I think they're really interested, and they're finding out the truth about them.
You know, we love this North Country. That's why I said these small towns are so great. But in some cases, North Country people are known to be a little bit reticent about accepting new ideas. So you got to explain, how many meetings did you have, Jim?
Oh my God! I don't.
Meetings after
It's meeting after meeting, afternoon, nights, weekends, Saturday afternoon,
Yeah.
and it's terrible. The amount of permits that these companies have to go through, and the amount of meetings that we had, and I'm only part-time. I'm still working full-time. So
What do you do for a living?
I'm a maintenance supervisor at Chateauguay Correctional,
Oh, okay.
and it makes long days, but I enjoy it.
You're making about a penny an hour at this job.
Well, not a lot. But I didn't do the job for that
You do it
anyway.
for the people. You want to give back to your town. That's what we hear over and over and over from all these supervisors, people who serve in
You-
local politics. I take my hat off to all of you, because you got to put up with a little bit of stuff, right, from the first time you sit in that chair.
Quite a little bit sometimes. You have to bite your tongue, but again, I do it. It's giving back to the town. In politics, I found either you like it or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, you shouldn't be in it. But it's interesting. I really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, and every one of the supervisors involved in these projects has echoed just what you said. I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was good for the town.
Yes, and the same with the other towns, Larry in Altona and Mike in Clinton. We've had joint meetings and everything, and they've both done a terrific job, a very good job.
Somebody got to take the ball and run with it. You're the man, Jeff.
Well, I'm more interested now because I more or less came in at the start of it, and I'd like to get one more term anyway, so I can see it finished, and that way you have a finished product.
You can stand out on the porch of the town hall and say, "I told you."
Yeah.
It was a good
That's
thing.
right, but it's just a big change, and it's only natural that people resist change, but we've got to go green sometime.
Yeah.
We can't keep going the way we are. So
It's a good way to start. I didn't mean to hold you up. I know it's been a long day. You had a long meeting tonight, and we're doing this on the 9th of April. It's 7:15. Did you have any supper yet?
I got to eat.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did?
Yeah.
I had a peanut butter jelly sandwich before I came, so you beat me at that. Thanks so much.
I thank you for coming up, and I hope everybody will support our hometown cable television.
Oh, there's a man. We got to come back here. There's a man. I always end it that way. He's got my pitch already. If you want to.
I'm sorry I stole your line.
No, don't ever be sorry when you're promoting hometown cable, because we want to do this for a long time. Calvin's been doing it since the early 80s, and after Bob Venn died, I started doing it with Calvin when I left the radio business in 97. And hopefully we've got at least another decade or two in us. We got some milestones that we want to see come to pass. So if you can support hometown cable and what we do, in these wonderful towns in the North Country, meeting the most precious people in the world, please support hometown cable in any way you can. And thank you all the people that we've met in covering this wind project from the very beginning. I should have 6 new doctor's degrees just based on what I've learned, and there's so much more to learn in these projects in the future. Jim, best of luck in your great town here.
Thank you very much.
And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.